The movie starts in the year 2079 in Washington, D.C., where a CIA agent named Snow is being interrogated by Secret Service Director Scott Lang. Scott wants to know what happened to Colonel Frank the night before in a specific room. But Snow just laughs and responds with sarcasm, which earns him a few heavy punches from an officer. After taking a serious beating, Snow finally starts revealing what happened the previous night. As he tells the story, we flash back to the earlier events. Snow and Mace are in the middle of a brutal fight with an unknown attacker. The fight is intense and doesn't stop until Snow grabs a gun and kills the man. Right after that, he gets a distress call from his friend Mace, who tells him he's been betrayed and urges him to leave immediately. Snow takes a moment to speak with the dying colonel, who asks him to protect a specific briefcase. Once the colonel dies, Snow grabs the case and makes a run for it. Soon, armed police forces attack him and start shooting. In a desperate attempt to escape, Snow reaches the rooftop, only to find a helicopter waiting. With no other choice, he jumps off the building, crashes through the window of another one, and hits the ground. Even though he's injured, he keeps running from the police chasing him. He eventually steals a motorcycle and speeds down the highway while calling Mace, telling him to meet at a subway station. Snow makes it to the subway and runs toward a specific train car. As the train is about to leave, he throws the briefcase inside just before the doors close so his friend can retrieve it safely. Seconds later, the police catch him and take him into custody. Back in the present, after finishing his story, which sounds like something straight out of a Mission Impossible script, Scott accuses Snow of killing the colonel. When Snow denies it, Scott shows him a video that appears to show Snow shooting the colonel in the back. Snow insists the footage is fake, but Scott doesn't buy it. Shortly after, Snow's colleague, Agent Sir Harry Shaw, enters and takes over the interrogation. Snow clearly trusts him and secretly reveals that Mace now has the briefcase containing the stolen secrets. Meanwhile, Mace gets off the train and hides the briefcase in one of the station lockers. However, he forgets the access card needed to open it, and calls out for someone to return it. Feeling nervous, he starts walking quickly. On his way, he bumps into a lost man, which causes his gun to fall and accidentally fire a shot. The noise creates immediate chaos and alerts nearby officers, who quickly arrest Mace. In the next scene, we're introduced to the president's daughter, Emily Warnock. She's aboard a spacecraft orbiting Earth, accompanied by her bodyguard Hook and her assistant. She speaks with the prison warden, who gives her a quick briefing about their mission. They're on their way to MS-1, a maximum security space prison holding 500 inmates. The warden explains that MS-1 is the only prison with no torture or riots because the prisoners are kept in suspended animation. However, that's exactly what worries Emily, since reports suggest that long-term stasis can cause serious mental instability once inmates wake up. When they arrive, they go through standard procedures before entering the cryo chamber. Emily asks the warden whether the real purpose of the prison is to test the effects of deep space exploration on humans, but he claims he's just an employee and doesn't know anything about that. They enter a large room where prisoners are sleeping inside their stasis pods. The warden has prepared an interview room, but no weapons are allowed inside. Despite the warning, Hook secretly hides a small gun under his pants just in case things go wrong. Later, Emily is allowed to interview one of the inmates, a mentally unstable prisoner standing on the other side of the room. She tries to ask him questions to evaluate his mental condition, but he doesn't take it seriously. Hook gets irritated, slams his head against the table, and orders him to answer respectfully. The inmate seizes the opportunity, steals the gun from the guard's waistband, and starts firing randomly. The chaos leads to an explosion that takes out all the guards inside the room. After that, the man breaks free from his restraints and escapes his cell. Emily runs out and tries to get away, but unfortunately she gets shot in the leg. The man then storms into the control room and threatens a scientist, forcing him to open all the prisoners' pods. Terrified for his life, the scientist follows orders, but he's killed anyway. Once the pods are opened, the inmates wake up and start attacking the guards, and a full-scale riot breaks out. At the same time, in the room they were in, Hook regains consciousness and manages to send a warning signal to Scott before losing contact. The chaos alerts the low Earth orbit police authorities about what's happening at the prison. Meanwhile, Alex, the man's brother, forces another scientist to activate the security system, then slams a large button that causes the space station to fire on a police ship down on Earth. Harry and Scott inform President Jeff Warnock about the situation on MS-1. Scott suggests sending in a special forces team to handle it, but Harry argues that doing so would put Emily's life at even greater risk. Instead, he proposes an alternative plan: send in just one man with a specific mission to rescue the president's daughter. The man chosen is Snow, our main character from the beginning. He initially refuses when he hears the plan, but eventually agrees. The scene shifts to Snow, Harry, and Scott aboard a spacecraft as the mission begins. On the way, they tell Snow about an escape pod on the 5th level that could help them get off the prison station. They also provide him with explosives and detailed maps. After several hours, they arrive at the Low Earth Orbit Police Division, where an officer reports that Alex is demanding a negotiator. Scott suggests a strategy to keep the inmates from discovering that Emily is the president's daughter. They plan to send in a police officer to negotiate and trick the prisoners into releasing her. When Alex agrees to talk, he insists that the negotiator be an injured woman, and he selects Emily. However, Hawk doesn't want to let her go, possibly because he needs something else from her. The unstable inmate then shoots Catherine and tells the officer to take the body instead. At the same time, Snow leaves the police division and infiltrates the prison station. One of the inmates spots him and informs Alex, claiming it was all a setup. Furious over the betrayal, Alex kills the negotiator and orders his men to blow up the food supply. He then finds Emily's ID card and realizes from her last name that she's the president's daughter. Emily and Hook are inside an elevator heading toward a secure room. When they see an opportunity to escape, Emily grabs a fire extinguisher and sprays the inmate while Hook attacks him. Just then, the elevator doors open and Snow appears. The inmate lunges at Snow and drags him into the corridor, attacking him. Emily and her bodyguard manage to escape while Snow fights back, eventually blowing the inmate's head off with explosives. Meanwhile, Emily and Hook hide inside a secured room and wait for the rescue team, but there's a problem: the oxygen level is running low. After a while, Alex and his men figure out their location and head toward the room. Alex orders one of his men to bring him an engineer to open the door. They bring a senior prison engineer, but he's terrified and unable to unlock it, so Alex shoots him without hesitation and demands another engineer. Elsewhere, Harry guides Snow through secret corridors toward Emily's location. Along the way, Snow comes across the torsion system responsible for generating gravity. Before he can move past it, one of the inmates spots him and attacks. They end up fighting while floating in zero gravity. From the control room, Hawk sees what's happening and shoots at the system, shutting it down. With gravity gone, the inmate falls away while Snow manages to grab onto a cable. Once Harry realizes what happened, he restores the gravity system, allowing Snow to pull himself back up. At the same time, the oxygen inside the secured room is slowly running out, and the situation keeps getting worse. Hook makes a tough call and decides to do something that will give Emily a better chance to survive. Snow eventually reaches the top of the secured room and opens the upper hatch, finding Emily already unconscious. When he reports what happened to the Low Earth Orbit Police Division, a doctor guides him through the steps to revive her, and he manages to bring her back. The two of them then start looking for a way out before Alex and his men can reach them. Harry continues guiding them until they get close to an exit, but Alex overhears something, brings in the communications officer, and orders him to cut the radio signal. Now Snow and Emily are on their own without directions. They take a wrong turn and end up in a sealed room. Climbing through the ceiling, they drop into another section. Despite all the obstacles, they finally make it to the infirmary, where Snow treats the wound in Emily's leg. She asks him about the others, and he tells her he came here to save her, no one else. They continue searching for an exit and come across a storage area. Snow gives her a prisoner uniform to wear, cuts and dyes her hair so she'll blend in better. Meanwhile, Alex contacts Scott and reveals that he knows the president's daughter is on board, threatening to hurt her if his demands aren't met. The president immediately arrives at the low Earth orbit police division. At the same time, Snow and Emily enter the holding area where the inmates are kept, searching for Mace. One of the prisoners asks for a password, but they don't know it. Snow starts a distraction, and they manage to escape. They open a cell and find Mace inside, quickly shutting and barricading the door behind them. Snow hugs his friend, but the moment is short-lived. Mace can't speak due to paralysis caused by long-term cryosleep. Snow tries to ask him about the briefcase, but gets no response. The prisoners begin breaking through the door, forcing them to run again. Suddenly, MS-1 loses control and collides with the International Space Station. The impact causes a hull breach and separates Mace from the others. Snow tells him to press the emergency button, but Mace can't understand. Time runs out, and the poor man freezes to death. Snow reunites with Emily and takes her to a hidden escape pod, only to realize it has just one seat. He understands that he was basically sent here to die. He sends her off alone, promising he'll follow in another pod. But Emily refuses to leave. She doesn't want the hostages to have died for nothing and believes her father won't authorize an attack. Suddenly, Hawk appears on the station screens and threatens to kill all the hostages if Emily doesn't reveal her location. Snow takes her to a lab, where they discover evidence that the prisoners were being subjected to illegal treatment and forbidden experiments. Before they can figure out their next move, Alex and his men ambush them. Snow fights back but gets beaten and falls through a hatch. Alex captures Emily and takes her to the control room, killing the remaining hostages. Now she's his only bargaining chip. Alex contacts the police division and threatens the president, demanding release in exchange for his daughter's life. He lets Emily speak to her father, but she refuses to ask him to destroy the station if it means the hostages died for nothing. Scott is immediately suspended from his position for putting his personal image ahead of national security. The order is then given to destroy MS-1. Meanwhile, Harry contacts Snow, revealing that he's still alive thanks to his protective vest. He tells him about extra space suits and instructs him to grab one and get off the station immediately. On board, Hawk attempts to assault Emily, but his brother intervenes, leading to a fight between them. In the end, Hawk kills his own brother and goes after Emily, but Snow arrives just in time to save her. Security forces close in as Snow and Emily run toward the launch chamber, with inmates chasing them. They finally make it inside and seal the door. At the same time, the security team plants explosives on the prison station with a 30-second timer. With seconds to spare, Snow and Emily put on space suits and jump off the station moments before it explodes. After a brief free fall through the atmosphere, they safely land on Earth. Emily survives, but Snow is arrested a few days later. Later, in the hospital, he tries to decode the message Mace attempted to communicate in his final moments. Emily eventually realizes that Mace's distorted words were actually a code revealing the location of Frank's briefcase. She uses the code to retrieve it successfully, then visits the hotel room at the resort where Frank was killed to uncover what really happened that day. After investigating, Emily discovers that Snow had fired at an unseen attacker who was targeting the colonel at the exact same moment. From a nearby rooftop, Scott misinterpreted what he saw and believed Snow had killed Frank. Emily hands the briefcase over to her father so proper action can be taken. Days later, the police uncover that Harry was actually a spy and arrest him immediately. Once the case is resolved, Snow is cleared of all charges and his belongings are returned to him, including the lighter Frank gave him before he died. While trying to light a cigarette, Snow finds a hidden memory card inside the lighter, the real data the colonel had been trying to protect all along. Suddenly, Emily approaches him and teasingly calls him by his real name, Marion. The movie ends with the two of them walking away together, hinting at their growing feelings for each other. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel.